We'll now move on to invite public guests who've registered to speak to do so. One of our staff will invite you to unmute yourself one at a time. Just before that, I'd like to just comment on our practices. So we recently changed our practices actually last year around public participation to provide more opportunity for people to get a response to their questions or concerns. We've also tried our best to balance the desire to hear from the public with the need to keep meetings a reasonable length. Those of you who registered to provide a presentation will have 4 minutes to speak, followed by commissioners having an opportunity to ask brief clarifying questions if needed. Those who registered to ask a question will have 2 minutes to speak, followed by a member of commission or the police service having 2 minutes to respond. Please keep your comments to the topic you provided when you registered. We also cannot discuss any complaint about a specific employee of the service or interaction with the police. If you would like to discuss a complaint against an officer or other employee, please contact our public complaint director or the Calgary Police Service Professional Standards section. I would also like to thank those who made written submissions to us prior to our meeting. We have read these and appreciate your insights and input. And finally, a reminder to members of the media that we will hear from the public first, and then we'll hold a media availability for you. So we're ready to have the first speaker put through. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. We have 2 members of the public registered to speak today. So first, I will invite Carey Rutherford to unmute yourself. And when you're ready, you can go ahead with your question for the commission.
Check 2. Is it on?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge right at the start, as a member of the Truth and Reconciliation Research Action Team, the cultural sensitivity that was mentioned during the missing persons report that was given earlier. I'll just leave that there. So I'm Carey Rutherford. I have settler ancestry from both my parents' sides, and as I said, I'm a member of the Truth and Reconciliation Research Action Team for the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good. I want to relate a question our Research Action Team co-chair, Wupuski Miskanek-Zus, asked us recently. She asked us, do you know why nurses carry red crayons in their pockets? And the answer is, well, they may need to draw blood. And yes, in fact, that is a joke. And the purpose of that, as she had, was to relax us, and so we could listen better. And I tell it with the same intention. Our next question is, when will the Calgary Police Commission demand implementation of a budget line item for the CPS Indigenous Relations Office that includes Indigenous liaison officers? When the NWMP were formed, becoming subsequently the RCMP, their primary directive was to protect the settlers, the stolen land, and the resources from the savages. Their training is the template for all local police training across Canada. Consequently, their biases are built into local training of police officers, including the Calgary City Police. Why do we say bias? Canada's Indigenous peoples are 10 times more likely to be killed by police than non-Indigenous people, despite the overall Indigenous population being less than 5% of the total population. The incidence of Indigenous people who die by police is roughly 18% of all victims killed by police in Canada between 2000 and 2020. Ryan, I don't know if it's the same Ryan or not, sorry, but Ryan, the Inspector of Major Crimes Unit, said that 40% of his work is directly related to work with Indigenous people. This is why we ask for Indigenous liaison officers for each district, a separate budget line for the Indigenous Hub with full funding and staffing, and a commitment to the MMIWG2 report and their calls for justice 9.4, 1, 2, and 3, which you heard discussed earlier as well. Specifically, specialized Indigenous policing units within all non-Indigenous police services are to be, 1, staffed with experienced and well-trained Indigenous investigators who will be the primary lead investigative teams and officers overseeing the investigation of cases involving Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. 2, are to lead the service's efforts in community liaison work, community relationship building, and community crime prevention programs within and for Indigenous communities. And 3, are to be funded adequately by governments. And finally, from the Calgary Police Commission's Illumina Research Study 2021, quote, the findings and calls to justice contained within the Missing and Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women final report have provided overwhelming and undeniable evidence of the complicity of the policing system in the ongoing violence that Indigenous women experience, unquote. So, when will the Calgary Police Commission demand implementation of a budget line item for the CPS Indigenous Relations Office that includes Indigenous liaison officers? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question, Carey. I'm going to start off in response, and then I'll turn it over to the service. I would, the commission has and continues to have conversations with the service about their Indigenous work overall, and it comes at a strategic level, both as you heard today, the missing persons team and what they're doing with respect to that particular issue, with other things that have been going on both at the service headquarters, within the anti-racism work that's been going on. So there is a lot of work that's going on and continues to be a focus of the commission with respect to the Indigenous concerns and issues that we do need to deal with, and we will continue to do that. I would ask the chief to respond with other updates in terms of the work that is going on right now, and then any other commissioners who choose to reply.
Yeah, thank you, Carey. I appreciate your presentation and input on behalf of the Alliance. I don't think obviously there's anything new to say this month. I mean, the position that the Alliance has put forward has been a consistent one from month to month, and we have had discussions obviously between meetings as well. I know that you're well aware that we had staffing issues, and our focus was on sort of core policing activities, looking at how we do meet those calls to justice that you refer to. So we're continuing to do that. I know we have an upcoming meeting here in the next short while. I think it may be the General Assembly there for the Alliance. And so obviously look forward to that. But beyond that, I don't think there's anything new that I can speak to today that you don't already know. And so unless there's any more specific questions, I'll turn it back for any other comments.
I don't see any other comments forthcoming. Thank you, Commissioner North Pagan.
Yes, I just want to thank you for the advocating for these calls to actually be tabled. And one of the things that I'm going to agree with you on is that, right across the board, the Indigenous programs and, everything that is supposed to go to the community, those are the first issues on the chopping block when it comes to budget talks. So the way to alleviate that is to actually get people into those positions who know what they're doing and advocating, Indigenous people should be doing Indigenous policy. That's what I think. But in the end, for me, myself, we have to create that space that is going to accommodate these, these individual officers. And, if it's not there, we're just going to set these folks up for failure. So for me, I'm always on top of the system, because I do want to see Indigenous people doing Indigenous policies, and I want these areas funded to the full extent that they deserve. So please stay on top of that advocating, because we need voices out there. We need allies to actually, advocate where we're missing those voices. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.